Alright, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and I've been beginning to go over the PowerPoint presentations for Murachs, JavaScript, and jQuery for part of the AWD Application and Web Development 1000 Web Technologies class. And I'm up to Chapter 2, getting started with JavaScript. Alright, again, this is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College. And in Chapter 2, getting started with JavaScript, what you're going to see as we get going here is we have one applied objective and about, I think, 11 knowledge objectives. Our applied objective, given the specs for a JavaScript application that requires what we've learned thus far, code, test, and debug the application. The knowledge objectives. First, describe 2 ways to include JavaScript in the head of an HTML document. Second, describe how JavaScript can be included in the body of an HTML document. Third, describe how case sensitivity, semicolons, and whitespace relate to JavaScript syntax. Fourth, list the primary rules for creating a JavaScript identifier. Fifth, describe the use of JavaScript comments, including commenting out portions of code. Sixth, describe the 3 primitive data types used in JavaScript, those being numeric, string, and Boolean. 7, describe the use of variable declarations and assignment statements with numeric, string, and Boolean data. 8, describe the use of the arithmetic operators and the rules of evaluating an arithmetic expression, including order of precedence and how to override using parentheses. 9, describe how to use the plus operator for string concatenation and the \n operator or the \n escape sequence to add a new line. 11, describe the syntax for referring to a method or property of an object. That was 10. And 11, describe the use of the alert statement, the prompt statement, parse int, parse float, write, and write line. Now, before we go on, what I'm going to very quickly do is to create a really simplistic little file here. So I'm going to start by creating, this won't have any formatting on it whatsoever, but I'm going to start here by creating a very simple HTML document. Alright, that's about as simple as I can make it. Notice there's no coloring in this, but as soon as I save it, and I'll just save it to the desktop as, whoops, that's not what I wanted. Try it again. Let's save it to the desktop, and we're going to save it as index.html. Says it already exists. Do I want to replace it? I guess so. Alright, so there it is, and if I run this now, it's not going to look like much. It's a blank page, and it says their first JavaScript example. All right. So we've got that. So why am I showing you this? Because I want to very quickly show you if I want to add JavaScript to this file, 3 ways that I can do it. All right. First way is I can come into the body here and put in a script tag. All JavaScript goes in a script tag like this between beginning and ending script tags. Okay. And in between there, I'm going to put here alert, hello world. And you'll notice now, after putting that in, if I go and run this, there's my hello world. Now, it's not very big, but I'm just trying to show you what it looks like if I take the JavaScript and put it in the body section. Alright, I'm going to take the same JavaScript that we put in the body section, remove that, and move it up to the head section. All right, save it, run the program again, and again you see it. All right. Finally, I'm going to take just that line of code. I'm going to grab that line of code. I'm going to cut it out of there, put it in its own file. In fact, let's do this. We'll call it main. So function main. Main is a name that's used a lot in programming. And I'm going to paste that file back in. All right. Now I'm going to save this as script.js. All right. Now I'm going to come back to here, and I'm going to say here source equals script.js. Now my guess is when I run this, nothing is going to happen. You're not going to see that hello world. See in just a minute. And it's not there. Because we have to now do what's called call it. We have to let the system know. So I'm going to say here onload equal main. Because now I'm trying to tell it when the page is loaded into memory, call the routine. Let's see if that works. And there's our hello world. So what I just attempted to show you were 3 different ways that we can add JavaScript into our HTML file. The first, putting it inside of main, like when we have the script tags in here, that's considered the quote worst way, unquote, because what we're doing is we are combining and putting JavaScript right in our HTML. That's not considered good practice. The second way, putting it up here in script tags in the head, is a little better because at least it's not in our body section, but it's not as good as this way, which says that what we're doing now is segregating out the JavaScript. We're putting it in its own file. That's considered the best way of writing this. All right, so I showed you the source tag. Okay. The type tag is deprecated. You don't have to use it anymore, but we'll see it as we go on. So this is how we do it. Script source equals the name of a file with a .js for JavaScript extension, and our beginning script tag and our ending script tag. All right, there's putting it in the head, and I already showed you that. In fact, we can grab their code here. It's got a lot more to it than mine did. So let's just grab all of their code. All right, it'll probably look a little bit nicer, at least when we run it. So the first thing we'll do is let's put it in between our script tags right here. All right, so I pasted it in. Move this stuff over. I don't need this script tag now. I've already got one. I don't need the ending script tag now because I've already got one. Let's move this stuff over so it looks a little bit nicer on the page. All right, so let's look and see what this looks like. Hello world. Well, that's all it did. Did I not save? Oh, we're still telling it to use that script. All right, so let's get rid of that. We don't need this onload statement anymore. So let's try to run this again, and let's see if this stuff comes up. The calculate MPG application. Enter miles driven, 300. Enter gallons used, 10. Miles per gallon is equal to 30. 300 divided by 10 is 30. So that worked. We could pretty this up quite a bit. I'm not worried about it right now. Notice we can put stuff on multiple lines. There are a lot of rules about this. We're going to go over those as we go on. Let's segregate this stuff out so you can see what's going with what. All right, so I'm going to put a comment here that says input miles driven. We'll put another comment down here that says input gallons used. We'll put another comment here that says calculate MPG, which is miles per gallon. We'll put another comment here that says format MPG. And we'll put one last comment here that says display MPG. So you can see how comments break the code up, make it a little easier for you to see what's going on, etc. Display heading. Okay, but I can also grab this code. Well, first let's grab the whole script, all of it, as we did before, and let's paste it into here. So now it's in our body section instead of our head section. Again, that's the worst way of doing it, but let's run this. There's our calculate MPG, miles driven 400, gallons used 20, our miles per gallon is 20. Still works. Alright, finally let's grab the information that was there. Let's grab all of this between our script tags, cut it, put it in our script.js file. Okay, so there it is inside of there. Save that script.js file. Come back to here. Take these tags, move them back up into our head section. This should say script source equals script.js, just as we did before. We can move up now our ending script tag so it looks a little nicer. Alright, and then in our body section we'll say onload equal main. Alright, let's see if we get the same result. There's our heading, there's our miles driven, our gallons used, and our miles per gallon. Alright, hopefully all of that made sense. We went through it quickly, but I showed you 3 different ways to add JavaScript to your HTML file. Either adding it directly in the body section, which is considered the worst way because we are taking the body section which holds the actual HTML that we want to show on the web page, and we're integrating JavaScript into it, which is considered a bad programming practice. We saw the second way, which is a little better, where we put it into the head section, where at least it was segregated away from the body section. And then we looked at the best way, where we include an external file that we have written over here. All right. Just so you know, the editor that I'm using right here is Notepad++, which is kind of Notepad on steroids. I may end up using different editors throughout the semester, or I may just use this one. It's one I'm familiar with. All right, let's go on. So I showed you external JavaScript when it was in its own file. I showed you embedded JavaScript, where again, either we put it right inside of here as they've done. So if we were to put in this JavaScript, this is the result we'd get. Notice we've got current date, and it's grabbing it from the system, but ours would say Mon, Jan 22nd, 2018. We'd probably change to 2018, and the rest would look the same. But we're calling JavaScript routines here to get the entire date, here to grab just the full year from the date. Now sometimes people don't have JavaScript enabled on their machines. Either they don't know about it, or somebody has told them JavaScript is evil, or whatever. So you can put in what's called a NoScript tag. So if the person doesn't have JavaScript, all they would see would be 2017, or in our case probably 2018, and it would say, to get the most from this website, please enable JavaScript. All right. Here's some JavaScript code. I don't want to go over it because I think that right now it would probably prove to be too confusing for you, and that's not at all my intention. All right. Some rules regarding JavaScript. First rule, JavaScript is case sensitive. So if you look here, if you remember when we went and looked at our file, we said var miles equals this. Okay? Notice if I take that M that's right there, that's lowercase, and down here, I make it a big M. So that's all I did was change that little m to a big M. Now I'm going to go back to our index file, and I'm going to run this again. It says our application. It says enter miles driven. I'll say 400. I'll click OK. It says enter gallons used. I'll say 23. And it still works. So let's see why it did still work. Probably because it's got an older copy of the program that's loaded into memory. So let's do this. Let's close this. And let's close this. Alright, and then let's bring it back up again. So here is our script file. Here is our index.html file. Whoops, I just want this one, and I want this one, and I want to, whoops, let's just do this. Edit it with Notepad++, edit it with Notepad++. Alright. Now let's see if we still get, if the program still works. There's the calculate, enter miles driven, 333. Enter gas used, 11. Well, I'm surprised that it still worked because there we've got a big M. Let's try doing this. Let's try keeping that as an M like that. But when we display it, let's go here, we've got miles per gallon. So I'm going to display miles per gallon all in uppercase, just like that. So I've saved it. I'm going to come back, run. Okay, still is working. Not sure why, but the point is this, because I'm not doing a good job of making my point right now. JavaScript is case sensitive. How about this? What if we go over to the word alert here and we type in a capital A right there? All right, I'm going to go back and change this so this is now the way that it was before. All right, so I've written a capital A right there. You may or may not have noticed when I wrote alert, it's kind of in a chocolate color. It's a key word. But as soon as I make it a capital A, now it's blackened because that's not a key word. So if I come back and run the program now, run Chrome. All right, it says, it still gives me that, but it says, why is that still working? Wow. Again, I think it's working with older copies of this that I have still loaded into the computer. So, calculate MPG application. No, that's the one from Firefox. What I'm trying to get to is that is not a keyword. That is a keyword. You'll notice how the word var is a keyword. It's in blue, but if I put a big V in there, it's not. You're going to see this as we go on because everyone makes mistakes when they do this. I'm making several right now. All right. Let's go back to the slides here. So JavaScript is case sensitive. First rule to remember. All right. Fantastic. There we go. Second, each JavaScript statement should end with a semicolon. If you forget to put them in, most of the time you're okay, but it's good to learn correct practice from the beginning. Third, JavaScript typically ignores extra white space within statements. Are there exceptions to these rules? Yes, and we'll see them as we go on. All right, there's different ways to split JavaScript statements over more than one line. Guess what? You've already seen them. Notice here, originally, this looked like this. This bar gallons equal. The prompt was on a line all by itself, which is totally acceptable to do. Sometimes you break stuff up into multiple lines so you can see it all on the screen. All right, because you find it more aesthetically pleasing, it really doesn't matter. All right, you typically have your own reasons for doing so. It's your style of doing things. There are certain times you shouldn't split a statement. We'll go over those as we go on. All right, when you create your own variables and your own methods and your own classes, etc. in the JavaScript programming language, those are called your own identifiers. Identifiers have their own rules for how they're named. For instance, they can contain letters, numbers, an underscore character, or a dollar sign. They can start with either a letter, an underscore, or a dollar sign, but they can't start with a number. They are case sensitive. They can be of any length. They can't be the same as a reserved or keyword. All right? And the global properties we'll hit on at a later time. So here's some stuff that's valid. We will actually later on be using that dollar sign. So until then, we're not going to use it at all. This is fine, subtotal. This is fine because the underscore is okay. This is fine where you run two words together like this. This is called camel casing. We'll get into that later. This is fine with an underscore. That's fine, but we're not going to do that. All right. Now, there's two ways that you can typically do this. Some people, what they do is they take their words and they put an underscore between them, like you see here. Other people run them together, but take the next word and make it capitalized. This is called camel casing, and that's just underscore notation. All right. Other things, these aren't required, but you should use meaningful names. It makes your code more self-documenting. You should be consistent. If you're going to use camel casing, then don't use underscores. All right? Use one or the other. If you're using underscores, use all lowercase letters. So here's some stuff. Here are JavaScript comments. JavaScript supports two kinds of comments. This, if it starts with a forward slash and an asterisk, and it ends with an asterisk and a forward slash, that's called a block comment because it can go over several lines. Two forward slashes in a row is called a single line comment. So when you use a single line comment, what that means is where you declare the comment to the end of the line is all a comment. So there's what I just told you. My litmus test for using a comment is if I have to ask whether or not something needs a comment, it probably does. You can also use comments to go into your code. So let's say that this routine right here wasn't working and I didn't know why. I could put a slash star here and a star slash here. All right? And I could comment out that code until I could fix it. Some JavaScript statements that you should be aware of. Statement, whitespace. All right, a JavaScript statement is basically an executable line of code that should end with a semicolon. Whitespace, which are you hitting the space bar or the tab key or the enter key. An identifier, which we just looked at. You know, your naming conventions for variables, methods or functions, classes, etc. Camel casing, where a word like tax rate, where you run two words together and you make all of it lowercase except the R in rate is uppercase. Comment that we just looked at, the two types of comment, the single line, which is slash slash, and the multi-line, which starts with a slash star and ends with a star slash, and to be able to comment out code. JavaScript supports three primitive data types. Number, which can or cannot, but does not have to hold a decimal place. String, which is in either double quotes or single quotes. And a Boolean, which is true false. So there's number types. When a number is a whole number, it's known as an integer or an int type. When a number has a decimal place in it, it's known as a floating point type. Here are strings. Notice again, strings can be either two double quotes or two single quotes. When you have nothing in between, that's called the empty string. You cannot start with a double quote and end with a single quote, or start with a single quote and end with a double quote. So they must be paired accordingly. Boolean variables are true-false variables. Oftentimes, Boolean variables start with the word is. Is married. Is married equal true? Is married equal false? Type of an idea. When you want to declare your own variables, they should always start with the word var, meaning what comes next is a variable. JavaScript is something, and this may not mean anything to you right now, but it's known as being a loosely typed language, which means you don't tell the type of variable. So I don't say var int counter, I just say var counter. It's a good and a bad thing. The good thing is I can change the type of variable that counter holds. Later on in the program, I can say counter equal true. And now, if originally, let's say this is counter equal 1, it's an int variable. If later on I say counter equal true, now it's a Boolean. That's the good news. The bad news is it can allow you to be a more sloppy programmer. All right. So, how to declare and assign a variable? So this is variable declaration. This is variable assignment, but you can both declare a variable and assign it on the same line. Results in less code. So a variable is a named memory location whose contents may vary throughout the program. You declare a variable by saying var and then putting in the variable name. You assign a variable by saying the variable name equals something, and you can both declare and assign in the same line. So I can say var age equal 21 in one line with a semicolon at the end, or I can say var age with a semicolon, which is just a declaration, and then later on in the program I can say age equal 21, which is just an assignment. All right. If I say var age equal 21, that 21 is a literal value. If I say var first name equals double quote Jeff double quote, that Jeff is a string literal. All right, if I say var age equal 21, not only is it a literal value, but it's a literal and it's a numeric literal. Here are the arithmetic operators that you have available to you in the JavaScript programming language. Plus and minus, people don't seem to have a problem with. All right, multiplication is the asterisk. Division is the forward/. Modulo, which is the remainder operator, oftentimes used for dollars and cents or hours, minutes, and seconds, is a percent sign. If you want to be able to add 1 or either increment by 1 or decrement by 1, you can use the plus plus and the minus minus operators. All right. Here is the order of precedence. Don't worry about it for now because we're going to be going over it. Here are some examples, and most of the time it's what you'd expect. Notice that 13 modulo 4 says 13 divided by 4, which is 3, remainder 1. So you get the remainder. All right. Again, we are going to go over all of these as we go on. 200 times 0.05 gives you 10. 200 plus 10 is 210, type of an idea. These are called the assign or compound assignment operators. There's plus equals, there's minus equals, there's times equals, there's also divide equals and modulo equals. It's a shortcut. To say subtotal plus equals 20 is a shortcut for saying subtotal equals subtotal plus 20. All right. This is a little bit of a confusing slide here, but this shows a simple adding 1 using the assignment operator and using the what's called the postfix increment operator. We're going to look at all of these as we go by. Some arithmetic operations, not just in JavaScript, in any programming language, are not precise. As it says, if you take 74.95 and multiply it by 0.1, you'll get something like this. You would think all you would get would be just this the 7.495, but no, because computers don't typically do precise math. All right. If you want to be able to glue two strings together, okay, last name plus space comma plus first name would say Hopper, which is the last name, comma, space, Grace, and that's exactly what you get. You can also use the plus equal operator with strings. If these seem a little bit daunting to you, don't let them be. We're going to go over all this as we go on in here. You can concatenate strings and numbers, so you're adding a non-number and a number, so the number becomes a string, in other words. If you put a \n at the end of a line, all right, so if I said this, a valid variable name cannot start with a number. Then on one line I'd have a valid variable name, then it would be like I hit enter, and the cannot start with a number would be on another line. If I did this, the \, followed by this, that says remove any special meaning from the single quote. So just use it as a single quote. These are all things, again, we're going to be going over again and again and again as we go on in here. So we just saw how to concatenate onto strings using the plus sign. We saw the concatenation operators. We looked at string expressions, and we looked at a couple of the escape sequences. All right, I showed you this before where I did an alert for you, but an alert is a method that we can use that's part of what's called the window object. So I could have written window.alert just to show you, if we go back to our program that we were writing before, all right, where we had this alert down here, I could say window.alert, and you see that they're both in brown, meaning they're both keywords. And if I come back and run it again, whoops, you don't want to run your JavaScript file, you want to run your HTML file. So if I go back and run this, it still shows me the calculate application. The prompt is kind of the, well, it's a lot like the alert, but the prompt allows you to do input. So in this case, it says, this is a test of the prompt method. If we just hit enter, it'll take the value 100, which is not the number 100, it's the character string 100, and it'll assign it to user entry. All right? What does that mean? We already did it, I believe. That's what we use to enter the miles driven and to enter the gallons used. It allows for some program interactivity, which is typically what you're going to want in a program. All right. If I want to know where I am on the screen, I can use the window location object. We will look at, as we go through here, parse int and parse float, which will convert a number to whatever, will attempt to convert a string to an integer or to convert a string to a float. Notice if I go back and run my program from before, I'm going to purposely make a mistake. All right, I'm going to put in here, sorry, got to run the HTML. I'm going to put in here where it says enter miles driven, I'm going to put hello, and where it says enter gallons used, I'm going to put goodbye, which is silly, but I'm going to do that. And it says miles per gallon equals NaN. That means that one or both of the things I used in here were not a number. NaN stands for not a number. They give you some examples. Again, we're going to run through these in class where I think they'll make a lot more sense to you. If you want to be able to write right on the screen, you can do a write or a write line. The difference is a write leaves the cursor on the same line as what you're writing. The write line writes it on the screen and moves the cursor down a line. So here's some examples. Again, if I came in here and put in this code, I'd get this stuff. But again, it would say today is Jan 22, 2018. It would say it again. Welcome to our site. Today is Monday, like it says here. All right. That said Monday because it put the word Monday in there. Okay. Here, so we looked a little bit at objects, methods, properties. I've already shown you how to call a method. If you pass something to a method, that's known as a parameter. We looked a little bit at the window object and global object. We will look a lot more at all of these, including the dot operator and the document object as we go on. Here's that calculate MPG program. That was our first dialog box. That was our second dialog box. And that was our alert. So they give you the code. It's pretty much the same code we just used. But this one, here's another example where you enter 3 test scores. And it shows you the average score. There it is. A little more code. We could grab all of this. Whoops. So I can grab all of this. Okay. Come here, start up a new file. We're going to paste it in. I'm just going to do a bunch of pasting here. Looks like that was everything, but we'll see. All right, let's save this. We'll just call it scores.html. All right, and let's run it. So what are my scores? I got a 100 on the first test. I got an 80 on the second test, so that's 180. And let's say on the third test, I got a 60. So 180, 100 plus 80 is 180, plus 60 is 240, divided by 3 should give me an 80 for my average. And it does. Okay. We're not going to go over in this lecture here this code. We will in class. And that's it for the second chapter. I'm going to come back in just a moment with Chapter 3, where we're going to talk about some essential JavaScript statements. I will see you with that one shortly.